And there are other statements of the people of Hadith from the earliest generations with regards to the importance and the obligation of taking the narrations as a whole, looking into them, investigating them, and understanding them as one solid body. However, whether intentionally or unintentionally, these people who quote unquote did scholarly research on the Sunnah or wish to serve the Sunnah, they failed to perform such a crucial and basic task that the scholars of Hadith from amongst the Muslims have preceded them in for hundreds and hundreds of years. So now, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal, we will give a brief summary of the Hadith that were mentioned with regards to, or without a summary, we'll mention the most famous Hadith regarding the prohibition of recording anything from the Messenger of Allah besides the Quran. And it's the well-known Hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, in which the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, لا تكتبوا عني ومن كتب عني شيئا غير القرآن فليمحه وحدثوا عني ولا حرج ومن كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, do not write anything down from me. Do not write down for me anything. And whoever writes something or records something from me besides the Quran or other than the Quran, then he should erase it. And report from me, narrate from me, there is no sin upon you. Whoever intentionally lies on me should take his seat in the fire of hell. Waliyadhu billah. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تكتبوا عني. He said, do not write anything down from me. This is a clear prohibition not to write down anything from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, وَمَنْ كَتَبَ عَنِّي, whoever writes from me something other than the Quran, then he should do what with it? Preserve it? Pass it down? No, he says he should erase it. So this hadith is clear, and this hadith is collected by Imam Muslim. There are other hadith that prohibit the Muslim from writing things down from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, as the scholars of the past have mentioned, all of these hadith are inauthentic, and this is the only hadith here which is authentic, the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, which is collected by Imam Muslim. Now, the scholars of hadith, they have mentioned that there are several other narrations that allow the Muslim to record a hadith from the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. From them is the famous hadith in which the man came from Al-Yemen, in which the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam was giving the sermon in the Hajjat al-Wada', the farewell pilgrimage, and he asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to write down his khutbah and write down the different points of the rulings and the regulations that were mentioned in his khutbah. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, "Uktubu li Abi Shah." He says, write down for this man Abu Shah. Write what you heard from me. Write it down and give it to him. And the hadith is in the Sahihain. It's a totally authentic hadith collected by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Also, there's a famous hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu, collected by Imam Abu Dawud and others, in which he said, I used to write down everything that I heard from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one day Quraysh, they came down upon me for doing this, and they said, you write down the statements of a human being, a man who speaks when he's angry and speaks when he's at a time of pleasure, when he's not angry, when he's happy, or like this, for lack of a better translation. So it caused some doubt. So he went to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he told the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam what they said to him, and the doubt that they tried to raise in his mind and his heart. And he says, Uktub. And this hadith is clear. He says, write it down, record. I swear by the one in whose hand my soul lies, nothing comes out of my mouth except for the truth. Nothing comes out of my mouth except that it is the truth. And there are several other hadith, countless narrations, in which the companions wrote things down from the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So therefore, it seems as if there is a contradiction One hadith says don't write anything besides the Quran, and the other hadith they state write things down. طيب. And as we said, once again, there are several narrations. There are several narrations with regards to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, allowing the companions to record the hadith. And the hadith with regards to Abu Shah, we said that it's Hajjat al-Wada. Rather, it is a Hajjat al-Wada. It wasn't the farewell pilgrimage. It was the Fath of Mecca. It was the conquest of Mecca, which he gave that sermon. It wasn't the farewell pilgrimage. It was the conquest of Mecca. طيب. Now, let's move on. How did the scholars of hadith deal with this seeming contradiction? What did they do to harmonize between these two different approaches, or these two different views? There are some scholars who they make a jama'. They combine between the narrations. And there are some scholars who made tarjih. Some scholars who said that rather some narrations are stronger than others, or more than others, or more authentic than others. And there's some scholars who took the view of a naskh, that one narration was abrogated, that one ruling came after the previous ruling, that either the permission to write down came later, or the prohibition of writing down came later on. That one ruling canceled the other ruling. طيب. As for the scholars who say that we can combine, or we can make a tawfiq, we can harmonize, we can reconcile between these different ahadith, then they say the prohibition of writing down was specific to a certain type of people, or a certain instance or situation. And it wasn't a general prohibition for every single companion to refrain writing down a hadith from the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So they say, firstly, the first reason behind the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and forbidding them from writing down his narrations is that he feared for them to become mixed up and jumbled up with the Quran. The Quran was being sent down. Many of the companions were new to Islam. Many of them were getting accustomed to writing and recording things, and he feared that if they wrote down what he said in his hadith, and also what was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, the wording and the meaning, the Quran, then it would become mixed up. And this is a major problem. That there weren't too many people, companions, who had a very thorough understanding of to separate the two, because we said before there was so much illiteracy amongst the companions, because the Arabs during the time of pre-Islamic state of ignorance, and even in the early days of Islam, and in many places to this day, they rely heavily on memory. You'll find a person who can't read, he can't write, totally illiterate. However, he can memorize thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of poetry easily, without any difficulty. So therefore, this is the first reason. The second reason, they say that the Messenger of Allah only prohibited those people who he feared will become lazy and lethargic if they wrote down these narrations. And if a person's memory was strong, then there's no reason for him to write it down. And this was a major benefit and the wisdom that would that the Muslims would benefit from later on, and that is to keep a person's memory strong. And this is a very simple point. If you didn't have a cell phone, for example, and every number that you came across, you attempted to memorize it, it may be a bit difficult in the beginning, because we rely so much on writing down and devices and memory and so on and so forth, and the computer memory. But if you actually tried, just like a muscle, if you worked out, you would see it gradually progressing, and you will see that you can actually memorize much more than what you memorize. But the more you write down, the more you have a pen, the more you have a cell phone, the more you have an iPad or something like this, and you can a memo, you can write down the information, record the information, you find your memory becoming weaker and weaker. The third reason is that those who were literate, those who could write, were very few during the early days of Islam, as we previously mentioned.